Hi, Kristina. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Yay. Thank you for saying yes to coming on to sharing your story on Soulful IVF. I know you've shared your story before, but I think you said this is maybe your first, like, quote, official podcast, maybe, or at least
Yes, it
fertility
is.
podcast.
It's fertility podcast. And I think many women in the infertility world, we shared our stories personally with
Yeah.
friends and family. And um, but being able to talk about it on a podcast is great. And being able to have a platform like yours to discuss so many different types of stories is so wonderful. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah. Something you shared with me when we first connected, which stuck with me. You said families are built on love.
Yeah. 100%. That's the kind of the foundation for my wife and I as we were building our family, and we just kept coming back to that. And I think it's really important to have a foundation and something that grounds you in the journey, since the journey can have a lot of tough, challenging places to it. And that's something that we always came back to, and that really helped make a lot of the decisions and choices we made easier, since we knew that it came back to the fact that the families are built on love. And as long as we were building our family on love, we were making the right choice.
Yeah. Your story is so special and how you grew your family. You have three children.
Three kids, yeah.
10, 7, and 2.
Yes, correct.
And, I'm so excited to have you here and just kind of open up and share. Did you always want to be a mom? Is that something you always wanted?
Yes, I've always wanted to be a mom. It's
Yeah.
funny though, I wanted to be able to be a mom a little bit later in life.
Yeah.
Um, I had lots of different goals and thoughts and dreams. And so becoming a mom was something that I was like, I'll do that later. And that is
Yeah.
something that I definitely want. But I wasn't one of the girls in college, like, I want to have a baby right now. And I know a lot of women are like that and they feel called to it.
Mm.
I knew that the calling would come, and I knew it would come
Yeah.
later. And I started feeling that way as I approached 30.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I always wanted to be a mom. And it's funny, I always said that I wanted a lot of kids, like a big family. Or I want to know kids. So it was kind of like, and then I was like, I really want to be a mom, and I want to have, multiple children. I want to have a large family. I came from a family of three, so I have two other siblings. And so I know three feels large now, not compared to some other years where it wasn't as big of a
Yeah.
family, but for me, it felt big. So yeah, I always wanted to have kind of a loud, chaotic house, which is what we have now. So here we are.
So I've gotten a chance to, read your backstory. You're originally from Las Vegas and then moved to St. Paul for college,
Mhm.
played basketball there. You then moved to San Diego. You have quite a journey now. You're in Colorado.
Right.
And so there's so much you've done, where you came out after college. Is that right?
Yes. So I was so with my now ex-wife, who I
Mhm.
co-parent my first
Yeah.
son with.
Yeah.
We met in college. We played basketball together in college, and started our relationship there. It was,
Mm.
late 90s, early 2000s, and so it
Yeah.
was challenging for us to come out in that situation. But we came out after college,
Mm.
and really that's when I became a strong advocate for the LGBTQ community
Hmm.
and feminism and women's rights, and just
Yeah.
really put myself into that space, and was able to connect how what I felt personally and was passionate about with, political and social justice. So have really the last 20, 25 years worked in those spaces in different
Yeah.
ways. So yeah, I've been out since I was 22, right?
Okay.
I am now 43. So
Okay.
my entire adult life,
Yeah.
and have really grown my family and my relationships built on being part of that LGBTQ community, which I'm very proud to be part of. And it has created
Yeah.
its own challenges, its own rewards, but its own challenges too.
Mhm.
And how you make babies, how you present to the world. It's created some freedoms there, but it's also
Mhm.
created some challenges too. So it's interesting to be
Mm.
somebody that lives in that space and has also had infertility struggles as well.
Yeah. Thank you for all the advocacy work you do. I know you spent a lot of years in that work, and you're still involved, still to this day. And so a bit of your history, and I've had a chance to talk to you, read about your story a little bit, but you went through with your first wife 18 months of unsuccessful IUIs
Yes.
and then progressed to IVF. And I'll kind of let you share a little bit from there what happened.
Well, I do think that it's really important to share lessons learned with others.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so a lesson learned from that is when you're starting to think about building a family, spend the money and get tested. This
Yes.
was, my oldest one's 10, so this was what, 12 years ago I started the journey. And I feel like 12 years ago, maybe in the community or maybe in spaces, people didn't really think about like having those tests. They was at least presented to me as optional. These tests cost $2,000. You're young, you should be fine, was what the message I was given. And I said, okay, let's just jump in and try it. So yeah, we jumped in with IUIs, donor sperm, and was not working. And what's interesting is I felt it in my heart, in the back of my head, that something was going on. There was something more to this. It wasn't just timing, or it wasn't just, it'll come when it, happens. I felt like I needed to explore and do some discovery and like what was going on with my body and where I was at in that space. And I ignored that voice for a while. And so over the course of 18 months, I think we did like 9 IUIs, which is just kind of insane to be doing IUIs without having really a firm foundation of like, what is my AMH? What, like do an ultrasound to kind of see what's going on. So finally, towards the end of it, and it was really stressful. And I think that relationships are challenging, marriages are challenging at times, but infertility puts a very unique stressor on a relationship, and to go that long and to be in that space where we were at, it did not help us at all, and it created a lot of stress on top of other, issues that were, going on at the time. But I felt like it really did contribute to the fact that we ultimately split up. But I finally listened to the voice and was like, you know what? I'm not going on this path anymore. I need some more answers. Was tested and found out that I had diminished ovarian reserve. I was 30 at the time. And so that was hard since I was fairly young in this journey. And the fertility doctor I went to, which was a different one that I was doing the IUIs with, because, with him, I was kind of like, all right, I'm just going to start fresh. The new fertility doctor was like, you're never going to get pregnant with IUIs. You wouldn't get pregnant if you were doing IUIs and you were with a male partner. You really need to do IVF with the, the makeup of your body chemistry and where you're at. And so that was hard to hear, but also very like a relief, because I had some sort of answer. And I think that as we go through our fertility journeys, to have something tangible that you can latch onto is really helpful. So then I was like, okay, now we have a plan. And so we switched the journey to IVF, which led to my first son, Rhett, who is now 10.
Yeah, you've touched upon so many important things. I just want to go back a minute. So early testing, I know you're a big proponent of that. Get a foundation where you're at. And then also, thank you for being honest about the relationship strain, like it's so challenging. Fertility challenges affect multiple areas of our life, financial, relational, all kinds of. So yeah, we can touch upon that. And I just want to highlight, so when you started IVF, these were your eggs and then anonymous donor sperm, correct?
Correct. And I actually had a pretty good cycle response-wise. I really took time. Once I received my official diagnosis, I gave myself about 3 or 4 months to really sit with that and heal my body. I felt like my body had been going through the IUI so much. It's such a roller coaster. That 2-week wait is brutal, as many of us know. And I just felt like I was just in the dark. And so I just took some time. That's when I started connecting with Resolve in a support group, and started pulling some really amazing, powerful women around me who are still my friends to this day, that we were at the same point in our fertility journey and making families, and just like healed my body, my mind, my soul. It just said, okay, this IVF is going to be big. Let me, go into it with a really, open eyes and like a open heart. I think that helped a lot too. To not just be, okay, now we're going to do IVF. Like now we're just going to jump into this, because it's a huge thing. I felt like as I've gone through this journey, that really served me later on when we were building our family for other kids, to take that time, to really take that time. But the stress is real, and I think it's hard when you are the birthing mom in a relationship. I feel like your partner feels different types of stress, but I don't know if they really fully get what you're going through. And the support from your partner is really important, to understand that it is a unique road, that even though you're on it together, you're both like on slightly different paths. And there was just some disconnect there. And that was really hard. And I think it's hard when couples, whether you're straight or in a same-sex relationship, you go into it saying, we want to have a baby, we're doing this together, and they're right there with you, but you guys are still a little different, and my wife now, who I have my other two kids with,
Yeah.
and still happily married with, she and I had lots and lots of conversations about that because I had so much experience in my first relationship, creating my first son. I was like, I experienced this, and I want to make sure that as we're walking into our journey together, we're really having these open, hard conversations and understanding that we're not always going to be experiencing the same thing. And that really helped a lot. So I would say another advice is get tested early, really shore up your relationship and have those hard conversations. Don't just gloss over it, because I think people come in with the best intentions and we want to have a family and there's a lot of excitement there, but there is some hard nitty-gritty times that are going to come up and they're going to put a strain on you.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. So I know you went through 2 transfers to get Rhett. Is that right?
To get Rhett, yeah. So I ended up getting 4 embryos, which was exciting, out of 8 eggs retrieved. They were all like medium grade, not great embryo qualities, because of my diminished ovarian reserve. The amount of drugs to be able to get my eggs mature was a lot. So it was kind of brutal when I got to the point. And then the first transfer I did, like right after the egg retrieval, I did a transfer a few days later. I felt like my body was probably just really wrecked for that. It's hard to go through the egg retrieval process and then change and be like, and now I'm going to be receiving, I feel like it was 2 separate, like, mindsets. And so I wish I'd given myself more time, but again, lesson learned. I just wanted to be like, let's keep moving. So the first transfer did not work. And so I gave myself a few months and then did a frozen embryo transfer. So I transferred 2 embryos at a time, partially because of the quality issues. My doctor was like, let's do 2. Hopefully we get 1 from 2. And the second transfer worked with 1 healthy pregnancy. And so I have Rhett, who is now 10, and he was a really great pregnancy. He was totally healthy, full term. He's a big boy. The donor that we picked, so it was my egg. I'm tall, I'm 5'10", like you mentioned, I played basketball. The donor was 6'5". So I was like, he's still big. He's 10 years old, but he's 5'2" already. So
oh my gosh. Yeah, I have questions about how you chose your sperm too. We talked a little bit about that. It's like, would I go grab a beer with this guy, right?
Absolutely. And I just was like, let's keep it simple. I mean, I really do think you can the nice thing about donor sperm is, and you go through a sperm bank, because they give you lots of information. So, you have the whole genetic workup. So there was some basic things like, there was a couple of red flags that we felt were like, medical red flags, or just, different things you could kind of weed some people out. But really it came down to was like most of what my experience with donor sperms, they're pretty young. They're like in their early 20s, like a guy in his early 20s. So like when they're writing their essays and they're putting in their information, I'm like, okay, this is a 22-year-old guy that wrote this, right? Like, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? Right? So like, okay, so it was like, would I have a beer with this guy? Does this guy like sound like a total jerk? Like with this, and then I wanted someone that had some, athletic ability in their background, somebody tall. And so, and then my ex-wife is blonde hair, so she's fair, and I'm dark. So we picked somebody that had blonde hair and like brown hazel eyes. And so Rhett kind of has this mixture of like light brown hair, and he has these beautiful hazel eyes. And so I really thought he'd come out dark like me, but no, he came out more fair like the donor. So yeah, it kind of came to the point of, should I have a beer with him? And I was like, yeah, he's great to have a beer with.
Wow.
And so
I just want to like highlight too the strength that you carried with you as you were pregnant with Rhett and navigating through divorce.
Yes. So that, so fine, it was a little bit of a, I think people go through times in their lives where I always say it was like my country song era. So there was a period for like 6 months, a year, where I was like, I'm pretty much a walking country song, which is very not me. I got good grades at school. I got a scholarship and played basketball, and, got good grades, and, I got a job. Like, so I'm very type A. And then all of a sudden I found myself pregnant with this baby that I had wanted for like 2 years at this point. Right. My marriage fell apart like when I was 6-7 weeks pregnant. That was very stressful.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was. And, I do think it was, while my ex was excited about the baby, the strain in our marriage that had really been there before we even tried to start having a baby, and
Mm,
then especially, kind of rose to the surface with the fertility journey,
mm.
it just created a situation that was untenable, and it was better for us to separate. But it was hard. It was the happiest I'd ever been and the saddest I'd ever been at the same time, which is, a good country song. And then actually the job I had been at, which was a legacy nonprofit in San Diego. So I worked in community health and marketing and communications.
Mm.
And so I was working at a community health nonprofit, had been around for over 40 years, through a series of events. They went out of business in 3 months. So I
Mm.
found myself without a job, pregnant,
Oh my gosh.
without, a relationship, without a partner. And then we ended up selling our condo because of the divorce. So I was like, I don't have a house. I
Oh
had a
my
dog at the
gosh,
time. I was
Kristina.
like, my dog can't die because if my dog dies, it's just too much. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
This
but
was in 20, what year was that when you were going through all that?
2013. Yeah, because Rhett was born July 2013. So it was like,
Okay.
that 9 month
Okay.
span. And luckily I had really good people around me. And I felt like I had just prepared honestly too, I think it kind of goes back to that love. I was like, I love this child. This is where I want to go. I my ex is now a wonderful co-parent. She co-parents with me and my new
Yeah.
wife and
That's what's so
Brett.
beautiful. It's like you're all this big family together,
We are,
co-parenting.
yeah. We
Yeah.
really are. And it wasn't like that for the first few years. There was
Okay.
definitely some bumps as we found our way. But the biggest thing with that was I had a lot of good friends around me and my family, and I was fortunate enough to have education and just kind of I had this tenacity. I was like, I'm just going to find another job. I moved into this really cute little house I rented, and so it was hard, but I was like, this is where we're going. I'm going to have my son, and we're going to make it work.
Wow.
Um, and it was a hard time, but it was a really I think there's just times in your life you feel like, what are you made of? How are you stepping up to
Yeah.
this? And so
Sure.
I did the best I could to step up to those challenges with support and help. And
Mm.
a lot of my friends were like, you know, understandably not happy with my ex. And they were like, she should not have any part of this little person that you created, because they were like, biologically, this person is not even hers. And I said, this person is hers. Like, this
Mm.
is her son too. We went into this together. We were legally married. We lived in California. We were legally married. And that was part of the LGBTQ rights. I'm like, if she was a
Mhm.
man,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
we were the same thing happened, no one would say that, right? But because she's another woman and she doesn't have any biological connection to this child, it would be so easy just to be like, I'm just cutting her out. And I was like, no, this was a decision
Mhm.
we made together, and I don't feel right about like exploiting the fact that we're in a same-sex relationship out of spite.
Yeah.
And so I said, if you want to be part of his life, we can co-parent and we can figure it out. And she said, I do. And I said, okay. And honestly, it was a hard decision because I had to really remove my ego from it, because, you're going
Mhm.
through a separation. There's a lot of ego and a lot of things coming up. But I thought about Rhett in 10 years, in 20 years. And I
Mhm.
thought, I will one day have to tell him this
Mhm.
story. And I want to make sure that I picked like goodness and love for him. Like, even if there was no more
Mhm.
love with my ex, I wanted to pick love for him. And now seeing how beautiful it's worked out, I am just
Wow.
grateful for that choice. I'm just kind of grateful for that space, because he has three moms and he's loved and it's a great
Yeah.
co-parenting, and he's such
Wow.
a wonderful, special kid. And
Yeah.
yeah, I know that's not the way for a lot of people, but
Mhm.
I do feel like it was the right decision for us, and it kept our family, with all the other challenges that we face, kind of rooted in that love
Wow.
and that ability to have love.
I love that. Oh my gosh, so much. So in 2013, meeting Marisol,
Yeah, so my wife Marisol now, so I met
chapter
her
two.
when I know, chapter 2. So I had all the country song. I kind of got back on my feet. Rhett was 3 months old and adorable and just loved by everybody, and
Oh,
had so many good friends who were like, his godparents and just kind of a part of his life. And um, my ex and I were kind of figuring it out still with custody and all that, but we were separated, divorced. And then I met Marisol. And it's funny, I tell her that I was a little upset when I first met her, because I was like, I'm just going to date. I just want to go on some dates with a grown up and, just kind of get
yeah.
back into there. And then I met her like within like a week of being on like one of the apps. And I was like, oh, I really like her. And I was like, that's it. I just
Wow.
like you. And it was like magic. I don't even know how to, we just were
Wow.
like, we just fit. She's amazing. She's
Wow.
super
Wow.
smart, super fun. She loved Brett. And I told her right away, I said, hey, we're a package deal. Like I was very upfront in my profile that I had a son.
Mhm.
And she was like, hey, what's going on here? Your son's 3 months old. He's
3
you're
months. Oh my
gay.
gosh.
Like,
Wow.
what is happening? And I said, well, this, I just told her, I said, this is the situation, and
Yeah.
was very honest. And she said,
Yeah.
package deal. I get it.
Wow.
He's cute. You're cute.
Oh
Let's try
my
to make it work.
gosh. Okay, so you married in 2015 and you did reciprocal IVF. And
Right.
for those listening, share what reciprocal IVF is.
So reciprocal IVF is, I think it's probably called like lots of different things. We refer to as reciprocal IVF. So it was Marisol's eggs and my oven. So we had to do IVF with her.
Mhm.
And then the hope was, I mean, my hope, because again, I wanted to go back to that big family. I said, you know, I want to have more kids. One of the first conversations we had, she said, I do too. She did not have a desire to carry. I said, I'd love to be pregnant again, but because of the just hard traumatic experience of using my eggs for like, you know, IUIs and IVF, I was like, I just think I'm tapped out. Like, this is my one egg. And so she
Oh,
said, let's use my eggs. And I said, that sounds wonderful.
wow. So her
Yeah, so we
eggs,
did
anonymous sperm, again, ran a
not a
different,
sperm.
yeah, anonymous
Different.
sperm.
Yes.
Yes.
So Marisol is dark like me, so she's Mexican. And so we were like, there's not gonna be a blonde baby coming out of us. So we picked a dark, also athletic, like handsome guy.
Oh,
Tall, he's 6'2". So our second son, Tristan, is tall as well. And yeah, so what's interesting, and we'll find out with our daughter too. So none of our kids are biologically connected, so they're not full siblings. So I carried all of them. So I was the birthing mom for all three, but they're all different creations.
yeah, that's what's so fascinating. And
Yeah,
Tristan you had one embryo.
one embryo. So
Yeah.
we went into it again, like had all these hard conversations, but the thought was maybe we'll get a few embryos out of this and we can have a couple kids from this batch, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it did not happen. She got 5 eggs and one embryo, and we had done the test, went to a different doctor. She ended up she didn't really respond well to the medication, so a lot of her follicles were empty. What ended up happening? So we
Oh,
thought we were going to get like 15 eggs, 12 to 15, and she got 5 because a lot of the follicles
wow.
when they went in there were empty. So we were very, like, it's hard too because I understand that there's failed cycles where you don't get any embryos or none of them transfer
Yeah.
or make it to the 5-day stage. So I consider us really fortunate and lucky, and I
Yeah.
recognize that privilege that we've never experienced a miscarriage, we've never experienced not having an embryo, you know, make it to 5 days. But so we had successful and very lucky cycles, but they were also really challenging. I mean, to go into it thinking we might have a few embryos here that hopefully will build our family into the future, to having one,
Yeah.
that is a
You know, I know the
different,
one. I know the one.
you know, the one, right? Like that's a lot of pressure. And then I felt a lot
Yeah.
of pressure because her whole family, big, wonderful, beautiful, loud Mexican family, is like, yay, let's have this baby. And I'm like, oh my God. In me, like, and I get to carry
Yeah.
this baby. So I
I
felt
got this. I got this.
I got it. I'm into it. But I felt very honored to have this responsibility, and like kind of freaking out a little bit too, because I was like, that's a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
responsibility.
Wow. So
But
you had
yeah,
Tristan in San Diego, is that right? And then you
we
moved to
did.
San Diego?
We were
I
in
mean,
San
sorry,
Diego.
moved to Denver. Moved to
The summer.
Denver.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
we had him the summer of 2016. So yeah, we got married in 2015. Started
Hmm.
right away in that process, gave ourselves some time to,
Yeah.
get situated with that. And luckily had him. He was a very challenging pregnancy, and he's a little dramatic
Little
now. So
terror.
we told him,
Uh-oh.
you're dramatic from the beginning. But yeah, so the boys are just under 3 years apart and are
Yeah.
best friends.
I love it.
And just, yeah, Rhett's a great big brother. Tristan is like so sweet and is our cuddle
Yeah.
bug, and he loves sports. And yeah, they're great. Yeah.
So then how soon after? We'll move into chapter 3.
Chapter
Did you
3.
want
Yeah.
you wanted to expand your family
So
again?
we again, so two boys like under 3 and under were a lot. We were in San
Wow.
Diego in 2016, and
Hmm.
my wife had an opportunity to move here for a job, and obviously, I mean, Denver housing market is challenging, but California is even more. And so we were just kind of at this point where we're like, what is our future going to look like? Should we lean into San Diego? I mean, Marisol's from San Diego, born and raised. By that point, I'd been there over 10 years. So we love San Diego. We have a lot of connections there. So it was a very hard decision to make, but we knew that by moving to a place with a little more affordable housing market and this, wonderful opportunity for her, we could really move into that because we wanted to have more kids. We just weren't sure how to do it. Now we're kind of at a point where we're like, she was like, that was really traumatic going using my eggs. I don't know if I want to go through that again. I still felt the same way. I was fine carrying again, but we were like, we're running out of eggs. Like we have 2 women and no eggs all of a sudden. So so we were like, okay, let's regroup. And there was just a lot going on. We were building our career, the kids were really active and young and and then at that point, so Rhett was 3. The co-parenting relationship was going okay with my ex. Like she was still very involved. It wasn't as good as it is now, but it was good. It was a lot better. She and Marisol are really good friends. And so we just had a conversation with her, but she lived and worked in San Diego. And she was like, I would be open to moving to Colorado. Like, let me see if I can get there because I said, well, we want to move. And she said, I understand this will be good for Rhett. I understand that this would be good for, your guys' family. And so I think that was a really like brave decision on her part because she like let us leave pretty much. She could have said no for love, right? For love for her son who was obsessed with his little brother and she knew he had a good family unit with us and said, we'll make it work. And so that was 7 years that she lived in San Diego and we lived here. And we just did the long distance co-parenting FaceTime, hop on a plane, and so during that time though, there was a lot of decisions that we had to make based on what was good for our family. And Marisol was amazing with that because she always was like, I recognize, your ex as a mom. There's 3 moms here. She was part of all the big decisions. And I think that was very selfless. And Marisol showed her love for Rhett to say, this is what's good. And so we were just on the same page with that and found our way to this really great co-parenting relationship. Not without its ups and downs, of course, but I do think that distance did help because when she'd come visit, lots of times she would stay with us just because it was easier for her to see Rhett the most she could. And then she just moved here. So luckily she was able to move here last summer. So now she lives here and she lives about 5 minutes from us. So it's been good.
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
And like, so when you talked about wanting to grow your family, was a girl on your heart to have a girl?
A girl is in my heart. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the boys, because we had limited embryo options, we didn't even test them. We were like, we have 1 embryo. We'll see what happens, and with the 4 embryos, my doctor was like, they're medium quality. So, if you're willing to take your chance, like just take the chance with
So
them.
no genetic testing. Yeah.
No genetic testing. We didn't know what the sex was before we did the transfer. And so in my heart, I felt Rhett was like a boy. And then for Tristan, I wasn't sure. But when we found out he was a boy, we found out before I gave birth. I was like, oh, I really wanted a girl. And then I was like, no, it'll be good to have a boy. Like the brothers, like close in age. So the girl was just kind of hanging out there. And then, I mean, the one thing that, when you go through fertility, if you're a fertility journey and infertility as a same-sex couple, you can't choose certain things. So we were like, you know what, if we're going to go for it, let's try to get a girl.
Yeah. And so, what you shared with me, you found a clinic in Sacramento, California, and it's anonymous egg and an anonymous sperm. Is that correct?
Yes. And so this is a really great, like full circle moment. So a friend that I had met from the Resolve support group who I, had stayed part of and with for the last 10 years, she has twins that are a week older than Rhett, and her husband had cancer, and then she also had diminished ovarian reserve, and so they were kind of in the same boat that Marisol and I found ourselves in, with not great eggs and like not sperm, right? And so she had found this clinic in Sacramento. We lived in San Diego at the time, and said you can pretty much match up. So it's a donor embryo, but you pick the profile for the egg and the profile for the sperm. And then they put you in a pool with like 2 or 3 other couples. And then if everyone picks the same profile, like I want, somebody that has Mexican and, white, or I want someone this high, like whatever, like usually there's some overlap. And then you share that pool of embryos. So it's not embryos from someone else's cycle. It doesn't come, biologically from you or your partner. And she was in that situation. So I remembered that story, and she and I became really close. We're still close friends. I just kind of like tucked it, in my back of my head, in my back pocket. And I think what's interesting is most people who are going through this infertility journey, you meet people along the way and you learn lessons. And so that was something I was like, if I ever need that, that might come in handy. So I like reached out to her and said, what clinic did you use? Tell me about it again. And yeah, we researched it and had like a consult with them. And it felt like a good put for our family, because when you looked at our boys, again, not, biologically connected, both carried by me, created in love, and as close as brothers can be. And so we were like, for us at that point, it wasn't the need to have a biological connection, but a connection of love and like intentionality to have another baby. And Monroe is 5 years younger than Tristan. And then we just needed some time. Like we needed to regroup financially, physically, mentally. We were moved, and so then we're like, oh, it'll be great to have just like a little baby sister running around, which is what we have. And
yeah, Monroe came
that's
in.
the route we went. Monroe's here. Yes.
2021. So you were navigating through that during the pandemic. Is that right? Like,
We
were you
started
pregnant?
talking-
You're pregnant then, I guess, right?
Yeah, we were pregnant. So it took about a year to get all the ducks in a row for this clinic. So you have to go through, there's like, they have requirements. It's in Sacramento. We're in Colorado. So I actually had to go there, then work in conjunction with a doctor here. So there was moving parts. And so we started that journey, at the beginning of the pandemic. So like, I think we actually started talking to them like the end of 2019, because they have like their own process. Like they have their own list and their waiting list and, whatever. So we started that conversation. It had been on our hearts since about 2018, 2019. And initially we wanted to have a baby that was like 2 or 3 years, like so all the kids were about 3 years apart. Just you just have to wait for the right time. And we were like, so we started that conversation, and then we said, okay, in 2020, let's start moving. And then the pandemic hit, and that slowed the cog a lot of the machines for most things, right?
Yeah. Was your transfer in California or Colorado?
Yeah, it was in Sacramento.
In Sacramento. And so all these questions are running through my head. So the pool that you've picked your egg and your sperm and they matched. Are you in touch with any of the other people? Like, do you have any connection with the other people who may have matched?
No, and they don't reveal that.
Okay.
And I guess what they say is like, the way it was presented was there will be other parents, intended parents for this pool of embryos.
Okay.
It may not be at the same time you use them, and you can't guarantee that you could if right now, if I was like, can we have another embryo? They were like, if they're available, they probably won't be.
Oh,
so you can't guarantee like another like full sibling from that.
Okay.
And so we were like,
Can I ask? Yeah, and cost too. Is it significantly more to get a donor?
Less. It was less
to get a donor embryo.
Yeah. So for Rhett, it ended up being about maybe 40 grand with everything kind of all put in together with the IUIs and stuff. Tristan was the most expensive because it was, IVF for Marisol and then me for a frozen embryo transfer. And the drugs were just a lot of both sides. So that was about 50 grand.
Oh,
and then the nice thing about this donor embryo program is it's you get if you meet the requirements, you can do I don't know what they call it, but pretty much you get 3 transfers over the course of like 18 months. And if you aren't pregnant past 6 weeks for any of the transfers, you get half your money back. And so it's like a little bit of a guarantee program if you hit certain requirements. And so I hit those requirements. So we put into that program. So I think it ended up being about 25 grand. And really, when you're thinking the medicines, I mean, the medications was considerably less since you're not doing any egg retrieval. So it was progesterone and then birth control to like, sync up your cycle. And that was kind of it, because you're just doing the transfer, and then they handle all the one thing is you do have to pick the profile from the eggs and the sperm donors that they have in their specific program. So like I couldn't go to like a separate sperm bank and say, oh, I want this and then this egg and like piece them. They like presented you the profile based on, they have this really great intake. Our nurse was amazing, learned about us, learned about Marisol, like, just kind of like your family. And so they presented profiles based on some criteria, and then kind of just based on like, we think this would be a great fit for your family. And we talked through it. And the first profile they presented us, we declined. And then the second one, we said, yeah, that feels like a good match. And we were really happy with it. And they give you all the information too. It's the same thing as when you do donor sperm. So you have like, all their medical information. They write out essays. It's like, so I have stacks of papers for all my kids for their donors. And I've put their information in their baby books, so they're very aware that they're donor conceived. And there's so even though they're anonymous donors on all sides, they have as much information as I have, they have.
Oh my gosh, thank you for your transparency and just sharing everything related to cost. And you had a good experience, it sounds like, with that clinic then.
I love them. I totally recommend them. They were great. And, the pandemic did make it challenging because travel during the pandemic was hard and it was stressful, to do anything during the pandemic. They took lots of precautions though, but I went by myself, except for the actual transfer because it was very kind of locked down. And then, so yeah, we did the transfer in February of 2021. So, it was a little better then, but not great, with pandemic stuff. So we were thinking about actually doing the transfer more in 2020, but because of the pandemic, that Brett was in first grade, he was home from school, our jobs were crazy. It was just, we were like, okay, that was kind of the lesson I had learned from previous transfers was we need to be in the right space. In the grand scheme of things, what's 3 months, right? And so we're like, let's give ourselves the summer. Let's just kind of let 2020, we were in the works with it. We were preparing. But instead of doing the transfer in November 2020, we're like, let's give ourselves through the holidays and just kind of, prepare. And that made a big difference, I think, mentally to go into that. And so, so we went in February, around Valentine's Day. So our Valentine's Day baby and
nice
and did the transfer. And she was born in November 21.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Your story is so remarkable. It's like you became a mom in 3 different ways, right?
Right. Yeah,
it's so cool.
Thank you.
It's so cool. Other than Resolve, the support group, were there other outside supports you were seeking or any holistic supports you were doing? I'm just curious.
I did
navigating
acupuncture.
Acupuncture. Okay.
I'm a big proponent of acupuncture. So I use wonderful fertility acupuncturists, a different one each time. Here too, when I was preparing myself for the transfer with Monroe, with our third baby, just from the beginning, from when I did egg retrievals or transfers all the way through the pregnancy, I did acupuncture, and that was I felt very helpful. It was if anything, it was a time for me just to have some body work and to breathe and feel like aligning some energies and connections and talking to somebody that really cared. I mean, especially when you have multiple kids. So it's I'm pregnant and I have 2 little ones at home, or I have 1 little one at home, you're busy, right? And so to be able to go and just this is my hour every week to have some time to somebody who really is asking about you and how you're feeling was great. And I felt I honestly think it was a big impact, a big, in the success of my cycles, and my pregnancies were all great. And I was able to have vaginal births for all 3 pregnancies. And so I just felt it really prepared my body to go full term with all 3. So I can't say enough about acupuncture. So acupuncture was really wonderful. Resolve was amazing with their support groups and their online forums and everything. A lot of this was obviously it was Instagram and Facebook, but it wasn't the way it is now, where there's so many other great resources. So it's funny now, there's so many amazing resources. But when I was, first trying to get pregnant with Red in 2011, I remember Googling, how can I put lesbians trying to have a baby help type of things. And in these I was finding blogs and live journals back then, right? So now I think there is a ton of amazing resources like you, Lisa, and Instagram and different places. That community is really important. It can be isolating, it can be alienating, especially since everyone has a different journey. I mean, my journey was super unique. I was doing all these different types of fertilities options. I was in a same-sex relationship. I was divorced from another woman. It was just kind of there's no one like me that I could relate to, but I could relate to where's your cycle at, right? And having a small toddler and trying to get pregnant again. And there was other commonalities, which I think are really important to find. And when it comes down to it, there's more commonalities and differences, I think, in our journeys. And that's really powerful.
Excuse me. Yeah. Were you affected much by the hormones, by the medications, or was it pretty smooth sailing for you? Would you say?
That's such an interesting question. I feel I don't know, probably have to ask Marisol how much I was affected, because I felt like I was okay-ish. No, I had good pregnancies. I was able to stay healthy and work out through them. And I loved being pregnant. I mean, as much as you could love being pregnant to a certain point. Actually, postpartum was probably harder for me. So like I said, I'm really type A. So to me, I'm like, we have a plan. Like, this is my part in the plan. These are the drugs we have to take. This is what I'm doing when I was pregnant, but
Right.
postpartum was hard. That was always a challenging part for me. With the newborn phase wasn't my favorite. Luckily we had a lot of help, and Marisol loves the newborn phase. So she did all the cuddles and things, a lot of the cuddles and
Oh,
nighttime waking ups and
yeah.
whatever. But postpartum was hard. It kind of wrecked my body with the 3 pregnancies, even though
Mm.
labor and stuff was fine. So I feel like coming down from the hormones was probably harder for me than
Yeah.
like ramping them up.
Yeah. Thanks for being real about that. Do you think being an athlete supported you, that athlete mentality? I've done a
I
podcast
think
episode
so.
on that. I too am a former college athlete in volleyball. And it's like that mindset did help me going through fertility. I'm curious if it did support you in any way.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it totally supported me. I think there's a lot of discipline in
Yeah.
fertility.
Yeah.
Um, if you're organized, I think there's some natural traits that help. Not that if you're not organized, not an athlete, can't go through an IVF cycle. But I think if you're organized, it helps because I had a whole like calendar. You have to take shots
Uh-huh.
at a certain time. You have like a
Yeah.
little pill, but like the whole thing, right? So
Yeah.
that helped. And I think, yeah, just the ability as an athlete to be disciplined and understand like your body can physically feel like uncomfortable, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Uh-huh.
And athletes, we push ourselves
Yeah.
for a greater good. And that's how I always, when I went into every pregnancy, I'm like, I know there's gonna be some comfortable moments. I mean, I gained 70 pounds with each pregnancy, so I like gained the
Oh,
weight, lost the weight,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so there's a lot on my body.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I remember running ladders, or I played basketball, and pushing yourself with
Mhm.
different athletic stuff. And so yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of overlap there.
Mhm.
And
I
you
do
learn to
too.
trust your body too
Yeah, you
when you're an
do.
athlete. Mhm.
Believing and trusting your gut. That's something you shared with me too when we first connected, that you really did all along this way, listening to your body, trusting. Share a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
it's so important. I think that everybody has that voice inside them and has that
Yeah.
feeling. And I
Mhm.
think what's really hard is when you want something really bad, it's very easy to ignore that voice. Um, I think a lot of women who are listening to this podcast really want to have a baby, and they're not having a baby in the timeline they think they want to. I mean, whether you've been trying for a month or 5 years, whether you've had, miscarriages or failed cycles or whatever, like it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard that day to day to wake up knowing you're not pregnant, or you might be pregnant, or you have to wait until the next doctor's appointment. Um, so when I feel like you want something so bad, it's really easy to ignore what you know and what you feel, and to have that patience. And so I tried to do, through acupuncture, or just I would work out, and I would kind of like just meditate that way and say, what is my grounding principle here? Like, what decision can I make based on love, and what can I make based on what will be like compassion for myself and my family at the time. And sometimes that
Mhm.
is being patient. Sometimes that is
Yeah.
saying, give ourselves a few months. Sometimes it's like, stop waiting and let's do it. Let's try it. Let's jump in.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think connecting with that voice inside of you, and your gut, and knowing what's going on really helps a
Mhm.
lot, especially when you get thrown into a world of schedules and
Yeah.
appointments. It gets
Yeah.
really clinical really fast.
Oh yeah.
So having that other side, which I know, so much about with manifesting and manifestations, and just kind of thinking through it, it's
Mhm.
super important. You cannot just take that out of the equation. It's still a magical thing that happens, even
Yeah.
though there's 7 people in the room, like
Right.
to like make
Right.
the magic happen. Like when I look through all the people who helped, create my kids, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's like dozens of people, like everything from,
Yeah.
the doctors to the embryos to the donors to the,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful to them.
Talk about love building your family. I mean,
Right? I
the
know. And I've
love of
met
all
so
these
many
individuals
women,
who have
and
created these beings.
absolutely. And the people that, I mean, honestly, it's some of the best healthcare professionals I've ever met that have worked in fertility clinics. And
Yeah.
they've just been amazing. They're just amazing,
Yeah.
wonderful people who are there. They really take it seriously, and
Mm.
they get it. It's awesome. Yeah, it's a really great community. So while it's like one of those things where I would be, when I first thought about having kids, I really was like, oh, we'll do some IUIs. I'm healthy and young. It'll be fine. And now to see everything that I've gone through, I don't know if I would change it, honestly. When I look at my
Yeah.
kids and I think about the challenges and the rewards I've gotten, you know,
Yeah.
it was the
Oh,
road
I'm
I was meant to take.
so grateful to you for just opening up, sharing your story, and being an advocate, and you're on the board for the Colorado Fertility Advocates here. I just want to give a shout out to them. So
they're wonderful. Yeah, they're
thank
wonderful.
you. You're
Yeah,
new in that role this year, right?
Yeah, I am new in that role, and it was a really great opportunity because so much of the work that I have done in this space have been, you know, just being really visible. So everyone knows the story. I mean, my kids know the story, you know, everything from the divorce to co-parenting to how we make kids. Like, we're very open with friends and family, and, you know, it's just online. But I think what's important about Colorado Fertility Advocates is that it takes that personal and it makes it political. And I felt the same way when I worked a lot on like marriage equality in the 2000s, where it was like, this is personal, you know, this is people's lives. This is building their kids, our families. And then the same thing with like same-sex marriage, like this is our life. And so to take something that's really personal and to say, how can we advocate for that in different laws or to legislators, or just have it visible in a way where people who are not in that space can understand it, is really powerful. And I think that's one thing Colorado Fertility Advocates do. And I'm really proud to be on their board, to be part of that. And it's not, I hadn't been in the advocacy space. I've been in the receiving space of fertility support with Resolve and, you know, friendships in different places online. So it's nice to be able to put my voice out there and say, this was my journey, this was my experience, and this is why we need support in certain areas, because what happens on a state level will filter down to clinics, right? It will filter down to intended parents. And that's really powerful.
Thank you so much for letting me highlight your story. It's incredible.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Thank you for you in this space. And it's just it's really great. I'm looking forward to the summer with my 3 kiddos.
Love it. And if anyone wants to connect with you, can I drop some information below in the show notes on how people can follow you, or would you like to share anything on ways people can reach out to you?
My Instagram is open public facing, so that's probably the best way. I'm on LinkedIn as well. In my professional world, I work in corporate communication, so definitely sharing stories is something I'm passionate about professionally and personally. And anyone can reach out to me with questions about things. There's been a lot of people who have DM'd me or text me, and friends over the years that said, I'm trying to start my family. I know that you had a journey. Can you talk about this? Or can we share this? And so I'm always happy to give unsolicited medical advice. I'm obviously not a medical person, but just based on my experiences, what I think worked and helped. And I just think that we're all in this together, and the more I can support women is just a wonderful, beautiful thing. So of course, please share my info.
Thank you so much. Well, let's meet in person soon, and hopefully we can collaborate at some point in the future. And thank you again. You're helping a lot of people.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it.
Kristina.
Thank you. Bye.